The massive silhouette of Nexus 9 loomed against the backdrop of twin purple suns, its crystalline prison spires gleaming like frozen daggers in space. The transport ship carrying Kira Martinez, former Earth Defense Force strategist, glided toward the infamous facility known throughout the galaxy as the dump site for the universe's most dangerous criminals. Kira stood motionless in her restraints, dark eyes fixed on the approaching station. Unlike the trembling Centaurian beside her, she showed no sign of fear. At 5'9", with an athletic build, she wasn't particularly imposing by human standards, let alone compared to the towering alien species that populated the facility. But there was something in her steady gaze that made even the guards uncomfortable. Another human, sneered head Warden Zix, his translucent tentacles rippling with disdain as he reviewed her file. Classification: Deathworlder. Threat level: moderate. He let out a burbling laugh. We'll see how long this one lasts. The processing was brutal but efficient. They stripped her of her transport clothes, ran her through decontamination, and fitted her with a prison jumpsuit embedded with neurosuppressors. Standard procedure for all inmates, though Kira noticed they doubled the suppressors on her suit. Earth's reputation preceded her. Cell Block D7 barked a massive Chronaxian guard, his exoskeleton clicking as he prodded her forward with an energy pike. Home sweet home for the next 1,000 cycles, Deathworlder. Kira walked silently through the corridors, memorizing every turn, every security checkpoint, every potential weakness. Old habits died hard. The cells they passed contained creatures that would have given Earth's worst nightmares pause. Multi-limbed horrors, energy beings crackling with barely contained power, predatory species that made Earth's apex predators look like house cats. But it was the eyes that followed her that told the real story. Curious, calculating, hungry. They all wondered the same thing. How had a human ended up in Nexus 9? Her cell was barely large enough to lie down in, with a hard slab for a bed and a waste recycler in the corner. Luxury accommodations by Nexus 9 standards. The force field hummed to life behind her, bathing the small space in pale blue light. "Dinner's in 2 hours," the guard grunted. "Try not to die before then. Paperwork's a real pain." Kira sat on the edge of her bed, closed her eyes, and began to plan. She hadn't survived 15 years in Earth's deadliest combat zones by being reckless. Patience was key. Learn the rhythms, study the players, find the pressure points. Our thoughts were interrupted by a commotion outside. A massive draconid, easily 9 feet tall with obsidian scales and wickedly curved claws, was demonstrating his dominance over a smaller inmate, holding the poor creature up by its throat. "Welcome to D Block," the draconid roared, his voice carrying easily through the force field. "I am Vorax, and this is my kingdom. Cross me, and you'll wish you'd never been spawned." Kira watched as guards pointedly looked away from the display. Typical. Every prison had its power structure, its unwritten rules. She'd seen it countless times during her military career. The strong preyed on the weak while authority turned a blind eye. Our cell neighbor, a spindly creature with iridescent fur, whispered through the wall. "You should know, Vorax has it out for humans especially. Lost his clutch mate to Earth forces during the Orion conflict." "Thanks for the warning," Kira replied quietly, her voice betraying nothing of her thoughts. "I'm Ren," the creature continued. "Been here 3 cycles, if you need anything." "Kira," she offered simply. Allies were good, but trust had to be earned. The lights dimmed, signaling evening approach. In the darkness, Kira could hear the subtle sounds of the prison, the hum of force fields, The distant screech of creatures better left unnamed, the whispered deals and threats that made up prison commerce. She thought of Earth, of the rich forests and vast oceans that have forged humanity into survivors. Nexus 9 might be a cage of advanced technology and alien horrors, but to someone raised on a death world, it was just another survival scenario. They'd labeled her a moderate threat. She almost smiled at that. Earth had taught humanity many things, but chief among them was this: never reveal your full capabilities until absolutely necessary. Let them underestimate you. Let them think you're weak. As she drifted off to sleep, Kira's last thought was of the old Earth, saying her commander used to quote, "The most dangerous predator is the one you don't see coming." Tomorrow, she would begin to truly understand Nexus 9. And Nexus 9 would begin to understand why humans had earned their reputation as Deathworlders. The mess hall of Nexus 9 buzzed with the sounds of 1,000 different species trying to survive another day. Kira sat alone, methodically eating the bland protein paste that passed for breakfast while observing the complex social dance around her. 3 days had passed since her arrival, and she'd already mapped out the major power players. Vorax and his inner circle controlled most of the contraband flowing through D Block. The guards, led by the ruthlessly efficient Commander Nixis, maintained order through selective enforcement, turning a blind eye to certain violations while cracking down harshly on others. "Mind if I join you?" A gravelly voice interrupted her thoughts. It belonged to a massive Eurodian named Thorn, his rock-like skin covered in luminescent patterns. Without waiting for an answer, he settled his bulk onto the bench across from her. "Most people ask before sitting," Kira noted, continuing to eat. Thorn's crystalline eyes studied her. "Most people don't survive 3 days in D Block without picking a side. You've got Vorax curious, and when Vorax gets curious, people tend to disappear." "I appreciate the warning," Kira replied evenly, "but I didn't come here looking for protection." A deep rumble that might have been laughter emerged from Thorn. "No, I don't suppose you did. Word is your military, Earth Defense Force." Before Kira could respond, a shadow fell across their table. Vorax loomed over them, flanked by his 2 lieutenants, Civ, a serpentine creature with natural venom sacs, and Krell, a hulking brute with redundant nervous systems that made him nearly impossible to incapacitate. "Making friends, human." Vorax's voice dripped with false warmth. "How sweet. Tell me, did your Earth training prepare you for life in here? Did they teach you what happens to species that don't know their place?" Kira set down her spoon, her movements deliberate. "They taught me quite a bit about dealing with oversized reptiles who mistake volume for authority." The mess hall fell silent. Even the guards turned to watch, their hands resting casually on their weapons. Vorax's scales darkened, a sign of rage in draconids. "You think you're clever, don't you?" he snarled. "Your kind always does, right up until the moment they break. And they all break eventually. Is there a point to this conversation?" Kira asked, her voice unchanged. "Or do you just enjoy hearing yourself talk?" Vorax's claws scraped against the metal table, leaving deep gouges. 3 days. That's how long I'm giving you to reconsider your attitude. After that, his tongue flicked out, tasting the air. "Well, let's just say there are many ways to disappear in Nexus 9. As the Draconid and his crew stalked away, Thorm let out a low whistle. "Either you're the bravest human I've ever met, or the stupidest." "Neither," Kira replied, resuming her meal. "I just understand predators better than most. Vorax is used to ruling through fear. Take that away, and what's left? A very angry Draconid with enough influence to make your life hell." Thorne pointed out. Kira allowed herself a small smile. Maybe. Or maybe he's about to learn why humans are classified as Deathworlders. The rest of the day passed in a blur of regulated activities. Kira spent her mandatory exercise period in the yard, watching as various alliances formed and dissolved around her. The prison's atmosphere had shifted since her confrontation with Vorax. Smaller inmates began watching her with something approaching hope, while the more powerful ones reassessed their initial dismissal of the human in their midst. During the evening lockdown, Ren whispered through their shared wall again. "You've done it now. Nobody stands up to Vorax like that. Not since the incident with the last human who was here." "What happened to them?" Kira asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. Official report said suicide. Unofficial story is that Vorax's people cornered him in the maintenance shaft during a work detail. Took them hours to clean up the mess. Kira processed this information silently, another piece in the puzzle she was assembling. "Tell me, Ren, how long have you been watching D-Block for the Warpen?" There was a long pause before her neighbor replied, their voice tight with fear. "How did you?" "The guards never search your cell during contraband sweeps. You know details about incidents you couldn't have witnessed. And you're very interested in the new human who's causing trouble." "I had no choice," Ren whispered. "They said they'd transfer me to C-Block if I didn't cooperate. You don't know what they do to my kind in C-Block." "I'm not angry," Kira assured them. "In fact, I want to make you an offer, one that could change everything in D-Block." As she outlined her plan, Kira thought about Earth again. About how her homeworld had taught humanity that survival sometimes meant making impossible choices. About how every predator, no matter how fearsome, had its weaknesses. 3 days, Vorax had said. In 3 days, he would learn what happened when you backed a Deathworlder into a corner. But first, Kira had preparations to make. After all, as any Earth tactician knew, the key to victory wasn't just about having the strength to win, it was about choosing the right battlefield. The lights dimmed to night cycle, but in the darkness of Nexus 9, plans were already in motion. Changes were coming to D-Block, whether Vorax was ready or not. The warning klaxons of Nexus 9 shrieked through D-Block as emergency lights bathed the corridors in pulsing red. 3 cycles had passed since Vorax's ultimatum, but what unfolded now wasn't what anyone had expected, least of all the prison's power players. Kira stood in the center of the chaos, watching as inmates poured from their cells, a mass of confusion and opportunistic violence. The neural suppressors in their jumpsuits had mysteriously failed, and with them, the force fields containing D-Block's most dangerous residents. "Security breach in sectors 7 through 12, the AA system announced coolly. All personnel initiate lockdown protocols." Through the pandemonium, Kira caught Ren's eye. The informant gave her an almost imperceptible nod before disappearing into the crowd. Phase 1 was complete. Deathworlder. Vorax's roar cut through the cacophony. The Draconid emerged from the surge of bodies, his scales gleaming with battle readiness. "You think I don't know what you did? That this chaos would save you?" Kira turned to face him, her posture relaxed despite the mayhem surrounding them. Interesting assumption. But tell me, Vorax, in all your time here, did you ever wonder why humans are really classified as dangerous? Before he could respond, a massive explosion rocked the facility. The lights flickered, and in that moment of darkness, everything changed. "It's not our strength," Kira continued, her voice carrying over the renewed screams and shouts. "It's not our technology. It's not even our resilience." She took a step forward. "It's our ability to plan." The backup generators kicked in, revealing a transformed battlefield. Thorm stood with several other inmates behind Kira, while Vorax's lieutenants found themselves cut off by strategic barricades that had appeared seemingly from nowhere. 3 days you gave me, Kira said, allowing a small smile. I only needed 2 to turn your own power structure against you. Funny how quickly loyalty shifts when people learn about your deal with Commander Nixis, trading inmate lives for private privileges. Vorax's eyes widened, his secondary eyelids flickering rapidly. Impossible. Those records were encrypted. Birth's greatest export isn't our strength. Kira pressed her advantage, circling slowly. It's our paranoia. Our need to understand systems, to find weaknesses, to prepare for every contingency. You saw a human and expected brute force. What you got was a strategist. The riot swirled around them like a storm, but in their immediate vicinity, a circle of calm had formed. Inmates gathered to watch, sensing a shift in the power dynamics they'd known for so long. You're still just prey, Vorax snarled, dropping into a fighting stance. All this planning, all this manipulation, you still have to face me physically. And no human can match a Draconid in combat. Kira's smile widened. That's where you're wrong again. See, humans don't fight fair. We don't believe in honorable combat or proving ourselves in single battle. We believe in winning. As if on cue, the ventilation system activated, releasing a fine mist throughout the block. Vorax's movements immediately became sluggish, his mighty frame swaying. Synthesized from your own venom, Civ. Kira nodded to the serpentine lieutenant, who now stood openly with our group. Amazing what people will trade for the promise of freedom from your control. The Draconid leader stumbled, his fearsome claws scraping uselessly against the floor. Around them, his once loyal followers watched their invincible leader fall. This is how humans fight, Kira announced to the gathered crowd. We observe, we plan. We turn strength against itself, and we never, ever fight fair. As security teams finally burst into the block, they found not a riot, but a revolution. Vorax lay unconscious, his regime toppled not by force, but by careful manipulation and strategic thinking. The power structure of D-Block had been rewritten in a matter of hours. Commander Nixis arrived to find his secret arrangements exposed, his corruption laid bare before inmates and honest guards alike. In the end, it wasn't plasma weapons or brute strength that changed Nexus 9. It was information, carefully gathered and precisely deployed. You've started something that can't be stopped. Thorm rumbled as orders slowly returned. They'll never look at humans the same way again. Kira watched as medical teams took Vorax away, her expression thoughtful. That was the point. Sometimes the most important battles aren't the ones you fight. They're the ones you make others rethink. As the dust settled, a new order emerged in D-Block. Not one based on fear or brute strength, but on a careful balance of power. And at its center stood a human who had proven why Earth's children were feared across the galaxy, not for their muscles or their teeth, but for their minds. The lesson of Nexus 9 would spread through the galaxy. Never underestimate a species that evolved on a death world. They don't just survive, they learn, adapt, and overcome. And sometimes, the most dangerous predator isn't the one with the sharpest claws, but the one with the sharpest mind. In the days following the D-Block uprising, Nexus 9 hummed with tension. The facility's power structure had been shaken to its foundations, and in its wake, something unexpected began to emerge. Kira found herself at the center of a growing movement, though not the one anyone had anticipated. Guard Captain Zara Vix strode into the common area where Kira sat reading data files. Unlike her corrupt colleagues, the towering Andarian had a reputation for integrity that had made her an outsider among her own kind. Interesting reading. Zara's crystalline voice carried no hostility, only genuine curiosity. Prison maintenance logs. Kira replied, not looking up. Amazing what you can learn about a place from its repair records. Like how certain security systems mysteriously malfunction when contraband moves through specific corridors. Zara settled her iridescent form onto the bench opposite Kira. Or how surveillance feeds develop convenient blind spots during accidents. Now Kira did look up, meeting the guard's luminescent gaze. Sounds like you've been doing some reading of your own, Captain. Let's skip the dance, human. We both know what's really happening here. Zara's multifaceted eyes shifted colors, a sign of intense focus in her species. The riot wasn't about Vorax. It wasn't even about D-Block. You're after something bigger. A ghost of a smile crossed Kira's face. And what makes you think that? Because I've studied Earth's military history. Your kind doesn't just solve problems. You eliminate their source. Commander Nixus was corrupt, but he was just a symptom. You're looking for the disease. The common area had emptied supply around them, inmates finding reasons to be elsewhere. Even the surveillance drones seemed to have developed sudden malfunctions. Did you know? Kira said carefully that 17 inmates have committed suicide in the past cycle. All of them were potential witnesses in high-profile cases against certain Galactic Council members. Zara's crystalline structure dimmed slightly, her species equivalent of a frown. Those records are sealed. They were, just like the records of unusual financial transfers to offshore accounts on Proxima Hawaii, or the mysterious disappearance of 3 whistleblowers who were temporarily housed here during transport to testify before the Council. You're suggesting Nexus 9 isn't just a prison. Zara's voice dropped to barely a whisper. It's a clearinghouse for political inconveniences. Kira set down the data file. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm showing you why I'm really here. My crimes were manufactured because I got too close to uncovering this operation. They thought sending me here would silence me. Instead, they gave you direct access to the evidence you needed. Zara finished, her crystalline form pulsing with understanding. But why tell me this? I'm still a guard. Because your service record shows you'd filed 23 complaints about suspicious deaths, all bade by command. You care about justice, Captain. That makes you valuable and dangerous to the right people. The air between them crackled with possibility. A human inmate and an Andarian guard, both caught in a web of corruption that stretched beyond the prison's walls. What you're suggesting is treason, Zara said, but her tone held no rejection. Only if you believe loyalty to corrupt officials outweighs loyalty to justice. Kira leaned forward. Earth taught us something important, Captain. In a hostile environment, survival sometimes means breaking down old barriers and forming unexpected alliances. Around them, the prison continued its routine. But beneath the surface, changes were spreading like cracks in ice. Former rivals began sharing information. Guards who'd looked the other way found their consciences awakening. The very system that had been built to contain and control was becoming the instrument of its own exposure. They'll try to stop us, Zara warned, though her decision was already made. Of course they will. Kira agreed. But they're used to dealing with individuals. What they never understand about humans is that we're most dangerous when we work together, when we turn enemies into allies and show others how to do the same. As the day cycle dimmed to night, new alliances were forged in whispered conversations throughout Nexus 9. The prison that had been meant to silence truth was about to become a beacon for it. And at its heart, a human from a death world was teaching the galaxy's most dangerous criminals and their keepers alike that the greatest revolution isn't fought with weapons, but with truth. The real war for Nexus 9 was just beginning, and this time, the battlefield wouldn't be confined to prison walls. The galaxy was about to learn why humans were really classified as dangerous, not for their capacity for violence, but for their ability to inspire others to fight for change. The Central Command Center of Nexus 9 erupted in chaos as emergency alerts blared across every screen. High Counselor Draz's hologram flickered angrily above the control panel, his multiple eyes pulsing with rage. "This is unprecedented," he roared. How did prison surveillance data reach every major news network in the galaxy? Beneath the administrative level, Kira stood in D-Block's common area, surrounded by a mix of inmates and guards who had chosen their side. The data breach wasn't just about exposing corruption anymore. It was about revealing the truth about why certain people ended up in Nexus 9. Transmission complete, Wren announced, their iridescent fur rippling with nervous energy. Every major population center in the Alliance is receiving the files. Zara's crystalline form glowed with fierce determination as she coordinated with other reformed guards. Security forces loyal to the Council are trying to lock down communications. But they're too late. The truth is already out there. The evidence was damning. Logs of false imprisonment orders, records of eliminated witnesses, financial trails leading to the highest levels of galactic government. Nexus 9 hadn't just been a prison. It had been a tool to silence those who dared to speak against corruption. "You know what happens next?" Kira addressed the gathered crowd. "They'll try to discredit us, call us lying criminals. But they forgot something important about putting their dirty secrets in a prison full of the galaxy's most dangerous beings." "We've got nothing left to lose," Thorm rumbled, his rocky form casting long shadows in the emergency lighting. The prison's main doors burst open as loyal security forces poured in, led by Commander Nixus himself. But they stopped short at what they saw, not a riot, but a united front of inmates and guards standing together. "This is your last warning," Nexus snarled. "Stand down or be classified as hostile combatants." Kira stepped forward, her voice carrying clearly through the tension-filled air. "Interesting choice of words, Commander. But I don't think you understand what's happening here. This isn't a prison uprising. It's a revelation." On cue, every screen in the facility lit up with a familiar face, High Judge Chorus of the Galactic Supreme Court. "In light of the evidence broadcast across Alliance space, I am hereby ordering an immediate investigation into Nexus 9 and all associated Council activities. All prisoner cases are to be reviewed for legitimacy." Nixus's face contorted with fury as his commands went unheeded. More and more guards were lowering their weapons, stepping away from their former commander. "You think this changes anything?" He spat. "The system is bigger than your little revolution." "That's where you're wrong," Kira replied calmly. "The system only works when people believe in it, when they fear it. Take that away, and what's left?" The answer came in waves of approaching ships, media vessels, judicial investigators, and independent oversight committees. Nexus 9's days as a secret political prison were over. In the following hours, as Alliance peacekeepers secured the facility, Kira watched from the observation deck as the first transport ships arrived to begin processing inmates for case review. Beside her, Zara and the others who had helped expose the truths stood in quiet satisfaction. "I still don't understand something," Wren said softly. "You could have escaped during the chaos. Why stay and risk everything?" Kira's gaze remained fixed on the stars beyond the prison's crystalline walls. Because Earth taught us more than just survival. It taught us that real change doesn't come from running away. It comes from standing your ground and showing others they can do the same. And now, Thorn asked, what happens to all of us? Now we make sure this never happens again, Kira answered. The galaxy needed to see that justice isn't about power or fear. It's about truth. And truth, like any force of nature, can't be contained forever. As news spread across the galaxy of the Nexus 9 revelations, a new understanding of humans began to emerge. They weren't just Deathworlders who had evolved to survive harsh conditions. They were beings who had learned to turn survival into revolution, oppression into opportunity, and enemies into allies. The last transport ship docked, carrying representatives from every major world in the Alliance. Nexus 9 would be transformed, not destroyed, but reborn as a symbol of transparency and justice, rather than secrets and fear. Kira finally allowed herself a small smile. Earth had taught humanity many lessons about survival, but perhaps the most important was this. True strength isn't in standing alone against the darkness, but in showing others how to light their own way through it. The galaxy would remember this day not as a prison uprising, but as the moment when a human from a death world taught them that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't violence or fear. It was the courage to stand up for truth, no matter the cost. And in the end, that was why humans were truly dangerous. Not because they could fight, but because they could inspire others to believe in something bigger than themselves.